it's not offensive, but it's just like a slight microaggression because again it implies that like only women wear makeup. They take the sorting hat.
Yeah.
And JK goes, they, them. But imagine being Andrew Tate. I could have been like,
You could have rewritten
Andy,
history.
sit down.
Hi guys, welcome back to teaatfour. I'm Lauren, and this is the podcast where we talk all things that normally stay in the group chat. To celebrate Pride this year, we're inviting people from the LGBTQIA plus community onto the podcast to learn about their experience in a very open, honest, non-judgmental, no question off limits way. And with that, we've got our first episode today with the brilliant Jamie Windust.
Yay!
Thank you for coming on the pod.
It's a pleasure.
Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience, just a little bit about you?
I'm Jamie Windust. I am a writer, author, and digital creator. And I am non-binary, which is maybe like a bit interesting about me. Other things that are interesting. I like to do lots of things on my own. You might have seen me on the internet doing solo dinners, solo days out. That's my bag. Big loner. And yeah, I love having a chit chat. I love dressing like a geography teacher.
Amazing.
And chatting.
I love that. So, of course, you're here today to talk about being non-binary.
Yes.
What are your pronouns, Jamie?
My pronouns are they, them. Thanks for asking. What are your pronouns?
Perfect. She, her. When in life did you identify that you were non-binary? And I guess, I don't know how you feel about this term, but when did you come out?
As a narcissist, I came out in a very gorgeous Facebook post.
Perfect. Very nostalgic. Very vintage.
Very vintage, yeah. Just on Facebook, I feel like I'm getting old because I've recently got back into it.
Is it?
So I've crossed the threshold of age.
Right.
Where I find it interesting again. I'm in the local groups.
Oh, yeah. Love it.
You know.
Yeah.
I came out online because I'd figured out what non-binary meant through digital means. So social media, YouTube. I was in the era of like before he was crazy, like Jeffree Star.
Okay.
That world. I was very much in that YouTube world. So I'd always been around people that were like androgynous or explored with their gender expression. So I'd always been around that type of people. And then when they started using this kind of gender exploratory language, my interest was piqued. And it was actually quite a non-event. I was just like, that's nice. Do I like that? Yeah, it feels all right.
Yeah.
And I just kind of stuck with it. And so I came out on Facebook.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, if you don't like it, whatever. And then moved on.
What were the comments?
I think I did it so that it was one of those things where I never came out, you know, like in film and TV when people were like, like I never did that.
Yeah, right. What was that?
Don't know why I did that voice. I never did that, and I always did it online. I think because I was maybe a bit scared to do it sit down.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I know, like a good little PR girly, I'll just do a blanket statement. Everyone will see it, get some likes. And it also just sends the message out there without me having to be vulnerable.
Amazing.
And it worked.
But what did the early days look like of you exploring, oh, maybe I want to be non-binary? Maybe were there other things you were considering in terms of your identity?
I think this was in my, not rebellious era, but I'd gone from being like a very, like quote unquote perfect school child.
Okay.
Always had my shirt tucked in. I was the one that said, excuse me, don't we have homework?
Oh my God, me as well.
Going from that into kind of late teenagehood, adulthood, I became a bit more rebellious specifically with the way that I looked. I was like, let's shave my head. Let's put loads of makeup on. Let's wear crazy clothes. And that was fun because it was like an extension of my natural curiosity into like, who am I and what could I be? And at the time, it wasn't really about finding out my identity. I was just kind of immersed in the dressed up box and having a fun time. So I wasn't really thinking about it. And then, like I say, when I discovered this language online and I discovered a community of people that were also just having a bit of fun, I thought, oh, that's a nice kind of community connector, this language. And I just took it from there. And then with pronouns and stuff, that's something that, like, coming out is kind of, you do every day because you don't have to, but like you have to tell people your pronouns. And that's in a way, like what I would think of as like micro coming out.
Right.
Because if you want people to respect or just know of your pronouns, you kind of have to say them. And in the act of saying them, you're coming out, which is why I got an agent.
That helps.
So she does it for me.
Love that. Love that.
Because I'm actually, funnily enough, I'm actually so British that I will just sit there and not say anything.
You mentioned you were kind of digital, the community or the people you were kind of looking at as influence. What was your in real life community like at that time?
My physical community was quite small. And it still is quite small in terms of like queer community. Like I don't have a huge group of queer friends. I don't have a huge group of friends, period. Sorry, that's very American. Period. Which is fine. But that's why I started doing digital creation work and digital content, is because before I moved to London, I was like, I don't have community. So let's find community in the palm of my hand. And then I came to London and slowly discovered community. But now I find community in ways that aren't necessarily queer specific. So like at the gym, or here, or at the theatre, or just like trying new hobbies and then finding community in that way, rather than, you know, having like a big blowout group of gays who like to go to that festival that rhymes with Shmula Boop.
My dupe.
Yeah.
Yes, Shmula Poop. Yeah.
Because that's not my scene. And
That's fair.
And sometimes it can be hard to say that, but
Yeah.
I'm boring and proud.
That's all right.
My
Nothing boring
pronouns
about that.
are boring. Boring and bored.
No, you're not. How do you feel about people coming out as non-binary in 2025?
I feel like with coming out as non-binary or trans, or when there's like pronouns involved that may be changing or names that are changing,
Yeah.
I feel like there's more logistics almost in comparison to, say, coming out as gay or queer, because there are certain changes, like lifestyle changes, that may need to happen that your friends and family may need to know about. So I think there is a way that coming out is necessary in that respect, because you do then kind of want to follow up with some extra information, like, I'm non-binary, and also here are some new things about me. So coming out can be quite helpful in that way.
Yeah.
Other ways, up to you. I know what people mean when they say, aren't we past this?
Yeah.
But like for me, for example, I never got to come out at school because people told me who I was. So I never kind of got that moment to like discover my sexuality and then like share it. People were like, you're gay. And I was like, what's that? And then didn't really get a chance to do it. So I think when people do come out, for some, it's like their moment to say, this is who I am and I'm going to take ownership of that.
Yes, sure. Okay.
Which is quite nice.
Have you ever felt, and especially now, do you feel pressure to perform your gender or what you associate yourself with and not just exist?
I definitely used to, a lot. I used to have what I describe myself as a career queer. So like when my identity and my world is kind of also part of my job. There was a time where they were quite enmeshed. So I kind of performed, not like in the literal sense, but like the way that I looked and the way that I was a lot more androgynous and a lot more kind of femme presenting. And I struggled to kind of step out of that or explore that fully without feeling like I was letting people down, or I'd kind of become known specifically in like the fashion and the modeling world of having a very specific look.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't change that because that's what I'm known for and that's what people expect from me.
Okay.
Whereas now I'm very, very less like that.
Do you think that's the case for a lot of people? They feel like they have to perform and like overly present, or like have it all figured out quite early to have people accept them, and then maybe not to think they're a bit of a fraud.
Yeah, and I think there's a specifically with like being non-binary, there's so much space within it where you, for example, presenting like feminine or presenting androgynous, and then perhaps in a year's time, kind of like with me, I was like, let's think about presenting more on like the masculine side of androgynous and like exploring that. And I think sometimes people can fear that they can't explore all facets of it because in their head they're like, non-binary people are like androgynous or white or thin, or they have a very specific type of look, whereas actually anybody can look however they want to look and be non-binary. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate that.
100%. How or do you label your sexuality?
Now, this was a funny one. Again, this is like the logistics thing. This was actually a moment for me, like a year after coming out as non-binary. I was like, hold on. We can't really say gay anymore. And let's break it down.
Right.
Gay would infer like a gay man is like a gay man is attracted to another man. So I was like, okay, if I don't, identify as a male, like if my gender identity isn't like a man, then I'm no longer a man interested in men. I'm a non-binary person interested in men and other non-binary people.
Right.
So I was like, what does that do? And then I was like, queer. Let's use that one.
Like an umbrella term.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, it's self-identifiable. So like I could decide what it meant. So rather than being like, oh, I'm not gay, so I don't know what I am, I was like, queer fits.
Yeah.
Because it's again, it's going to be whatever you want it to be. And I obviously understand the historic connotations with the word. But I feel like in our world right now, people have reclaimed it, or people have their own relationship with it, and we should respect that. But for me, it just fit. So I was like, whew, that's great.
Yeah.
Not in this weird, like, I'm not gay. What am I?
Yeah.
I'm straight.
Is that hard just to like kind of find a label for it? Is it more you questioning yourself, or did you feel that pressure from other people to have that answer? Sorry, including me for this fucking thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. You're the problem.
I think the latter, yeah. I was kind of like, well, what do I say when I'm on dating apps? And they're like, who do you like? Because I'll be like, oh, I don't know. And so, yeah, it was a little bit of like, oh, people are going to ask me, so I should know. Because this was kind of at the beginning of my like dip into media and fashion world and getting out there. So I was like, I should probably know. So, yeah, but I'm glad that I figured it out.
Amazing. Yeah.
Still single though, so is it really important?
What do you think is the most funny / most ridiculous thing you've ever been asked about being non-binary?
It's not necessarily super specific about being non-binary, but I used to hate, this is quite funny, I used to hate Halloween because I used to be very like, I used to basically look like David Bowie.
Okay.
Like all the time. And at Halloween, people would be like, who are you dressed as? And I'd be like, no one.
No one.
This is just my day to day.
Right.
And I used to find it really sad because the people would be like, I love your costume. And I'd be like,
oh,
I'm just going to Tesco.
Right.
Or any other shop. So that was tough. The questions I get a lot about non-binary are really random ones that are really like, you'll meet someone and they'll just be really invasive. Like, what do you say at the doctor's then?
Oh.
Or like, what's going to be on your tombstone?
Ugh.
I'm like, I don't know.
Who even thinks of that anyway?
Yeah, like, whatever happened to hello?
How are you?
Hi. Yeah, how are you? No, I'm fine, thanks.
How do you reply, like sarcastically or just?
I take my headphones off and I say, oh, I'm actually listening to, no.
Oh, it's actually Prada, Gucci.
Yeah. A lot of this is kind of like I get 50-50, these comments coming like online or people saying them to my face. I think there's something very British about people seeing something they don't understand and thinking they have their God-given right to just immediately ask. Like curiosity breeds this kind of sense of innate confidence, especially in men, to be like, what's that? Don't get it. Tell me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I play along.
Sure.
Sometimes I take the piss.
Yeah.
I be like, don't know.
Does it offend you? Do you feel offended?
It used to, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to find it quite offensive because it was very invasive. And when I presented more femme, it felt wrapped up in kind of like trans misogyny, and it felt I felt more vulnerable because there was often perhaps like a sexual element. Or like yeah, that's another question I used to get a lot of. Like it would be instantly like asking about my undercarriage.
Oh.
Yeah.
Their business? God. From strangers as well?
From strangers, yeah. Once I did have a very bad situation where a drunken sailor, put his head underneath my skirt, which
oh my God.
did make it to the police station.
Yeah, as it should.
A cab, but I did report.
Yeah. Upskirting is illegal, may I remind you all?
Yeah, thanks, Gina.
I think no upskirt is going to be watching this, to be honest. Hopefully not. But
in case. Now they know. Yeah, so people, again, it's that I really think that curiosity leads to that just blind confidence where people were like, I don't understand you, therefore I'm going to dehumanize you in a way and just ask the really bizarre questions.
yeah.
I don't do that.
No.
Imagine doing that to someone else. Grow up.
Yeah. Grow up. I guess that was on a slight negative note, so I'd love to turn it around.
Sure.
What would you say is the best thing about identifying as non-binary?
I think the thing that I love about it is that I actually, and again, this isn't a read.
No.
I don't think about it. I don't ever think about my gender identity unless I'm either talking about it in a very fun way, in like an open way, or when a problem because of my identity is brought to me.
Right.
So what I like is that being non-binary allows me to just, I don't think about, oh, I should be wearing that because I'm a man, or I should be doing that because I'm a girl, or, you know, like I'm not ever really thinking about the ideals of what I should and shouldn't look like, because I'm in this just like blurry place where like, yeah, does it look all right? Yeah, cool.
I think that's actually more empowering than even me as a heterosexual woman just getting dressed every day, because I'm thinking, God, does this look feminine enough? Am I looking too masculine? Is this hugging me in all the right places? Am I trying to dress to avoid the male gaze? Am I appealing to the female gaze? And it's exhausting. So I guess I look at you and I'm kind of envious at the way that you are so at peace, maybe.
As you should be.
Yeah.
You're envious that I'm at peace. I've not died.
Yeah. Not yet. That's, you got to decide your tombstone.
Yeah. Woo! No, I've recently learned about something called... No, I'm not going to talk about that.
Really?
Yeah.
You can.
It's like instead of getting cremated, you get boiled.
Yeah, I think we'll save that one. Okay, and on to that. We'll go
I'm not having a tombstone. I'm going to be boiled.
You're not actually going to do that.
My
though,
mum works at a funeral director's.
Oh, my mum died 2 months ago. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I didn't mean to make anyone feel awkward. No, that's interesting though. She works at a funeral director's. Are people asking to be boiled?
Only me.
Only.
She refuses.
I feel you're as quick as me.
Yeah, yeah. I've met my match. It's like Roger Federer and Nadal.
I don't watch tennis.
From Wimbledon. Actually, fun fact about me.
Yeah.
I made it to the final 50 of Big Brother once.
Really?
And it was the year that Andrew Tate was on it. Imagine that.
Andrew Tate was on Big Brother.
That's how he became...
How did I not know that?
He got kicked out like 2 weeks in because they found his...
Online.
Yeah, it's like the beginnings of him. But imagine me and Andrew Tate. I could have stopped this. This is like... I could have been like...
You could have rewritten
Andy,
history.
sit down. Come on.
Think of the women.
Yeah. Like, what about living in this middle space, Andy?
Oh.
No. But imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that.
I was literally we had to do like a day where the audition was pretend Big Brother. And then I watched it. I didn't get on. I was like, fuming. Watched it. He's there.
Oh, God. Was he being like that on TV?
He was quite arrogant on TV, yeah. But then, like I say, the Sun found his content and he got removed.
Thank goodness. Okay, well, let's move on to the next segment. So these are a series of questions taken from Google's most searched bar.
Like the ones that come down?
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. How do non-binary people choose their pronouns?
She won't be happy about this, but they take the sorting hat.
Oh my God, so...
And they put it on their head.
Yeah?
And JK goes... They, them. No, they just say... The thing is, like, pronouns are so fun because you can literally do whatever you like. Like, so many people I know that are non-binary.
Yeah. So she would like turn in her living grave if she heard that.
I'm going to get fined.
Get under her skin, please.
Again, this is maybe like a misconception that if you're non-binary, you have to change your pronouns.
Okay.
Some people will be like, I actually don't really mind you still calling me he, him, because I don't care. Like, it doesn't feel perhaps like alarming to them, or it doesn't. For me, like, if someone calls me, when people were calling me he, what I describe it as is like if someone was saying your name wrong. So if you were calling me like James, it's like a twitch. I'd be like, it's not really comfortable. But like it's not necessarily like super offensive because you might not know.
Yeah.
Someone might have called me James to you, and you just being innocent.
No, I'd always call someone out on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Becky.
Yeah. Shut up.
But do you know what I mean? Like choosing pronouns, just whatever fits, and they can change. They can move around. Some people do a combination of like they and he, she and they. Like I know people with she, they. It's quite fun. You get to spruce it up. Writing an email is very exciting.
Yeah.
Because
all sorts.
Yeah.
Love it.
So yeah, just Choose what you like. My mum actually asked me recently, she said, Jamie, what does he, they mean? She said, am I using one or the other? This is about someone else that she saw on the internet.
Right.
It's basically just like interchangeable. So it kind of broadens up language in a way because you can use both.
Yeah.
But most of the time people would use it because they feel like there's comfortability within both of those pronouns. So they're happy for you to use both. But if I was talking to you now and you used she, they, I would naturally make an effort to interchange.
Okay.
So as not to perhaps like exclude one because it might be tricky. So some people, for example, can sometimes, if you say you're she, they will sometimes only use she.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to
I get that.
use a bit of both.
So say if someone's pronouns were he, they, and you were like, you had someone that was like consecutively just using the he, would that be considered a bit of a microaggression to a non-binary person?
Yeah, perhaps because there's perhaps a slight avoidance there of using the they. But again, it's completely individual. You know, most people are not vindictive and most people aren't being horrible.
Yeah.
And so having conversation like this is really great because we can kind of talk about these things. And yeah, being able to have that conversation with the person to say, oh, by the way, these are, you know, just like reaffirming these are my pronouns would be great if you could switch it up, or do what I did, get an agent, and then you can ask them to say it for you.
Yeah, amazing. Love it. Okay, next one. Is non-binary the same as trans?
It's a question I get a lot because I would identify as non-binary and trans.
Okay.
Because it falls under the umbrella. So for me, like the definition of being trans is that your gender identity does not match the sex you're assigned at birth. So for me, that's true because I wouldn't identify as male. So for me, the term trans fits, although for some people they would say that, and this isn't exclusionary, it's just the way that they perhaps identify the word for themselves, is that they would see trans as more of a binary thing. So they would perhaps say that they are just non-binary. But for me, they're one of the same because non-binary falls under the trans umbrella. Okay. So you can have trans people who transition in the binary, like along the binary. So go, you know, like trans men and trans women. And then you can get people who are trans that transition from, say, male to female, and then they also identify as non-binary.
Okay.
Melting pot.
Yeah.
I think things like that. We get so hung up on like, what's this and what's that? Just ask the person and then they'll tell you their definition.
Yeah.
And that's not the homogenous decision.
Yeah.
Or like definition. It's just theirs.
Okay.
So, you know, we don't all speak for each other.
100%. Who do non-binary people date?
Well, apparently not me.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Hello?
Dating is interesting because, for example, online dating, the way of the land currently. When I say that I'm non-binary on a dating app, what happens is I am then shown to people, because when you sign up, it says, who are you attracted to, like who are you looking for? And you can click men, women, non-binary people.
Right.
So what happens is you'll get a straight man click women and non-binary people because people who are assigned female at birth can identify as non-binary.
Yeah.
But then I'm also saying I'm non-binary. So what happens is all of the people who are non-binary, dependent on their body types and how they live, are then shown to all these straight men. So I actually find it quite frustrating dating online because I get quite a lot of straight men who are actually looking for non-binary people who are assigned female at birth.
That's tough. That's challenging.
They enjoy the breast, boobs and the tits.
Yes, right.
All three of them. Which is fine, unfortunately. A cup. So, do you know what I mean? So like, it's tough. It is tough.
Yeah.
Because then I'm like having to root out the people that actually might be interested. So I'm saying yes to this lovely straight man from Hackney, but he's actually just looking for a woman or a different looking non-binary person.
Yeah.
So the pool can feel quite small. Hence why I've gone analog. We're going into hobbies. We're going outside.
We're going into the real world.
I'm having conversations with people.
I love that. How do you find that?
Deeply demoralizing.
Oh, I find dating apps deeply demoralizing. I actually think it's like better or more healthier rejection therapy in real life.
Do you know the one thing I like to do on that to get conversations is I've started giving compliments.
Nice. What's an example?
Well, I'm also truthful with them, so I'm not just gonna...
Yeah. If there was a non-binary person, is there certain things you shouldn't compliment on versus you should? Like, are there any grey areas or...
One thing I used to get a lot, actually I still do when it comes to makeup, is they'll be like, especially from women, they'll be like, you've done that even better than I can.
Right.
And I'll be like, yeah, I know. I've got a rougher canvas.
Right.
We're dealing with different terrain.
Yeah.
But it for me, I find it's not offensive, but it's just like microaggression, because again, it implies that like only women wear makeup, or like they have ownership over makeup. So they're like, you, this different person who's tried this thing. Even though I've been like, I used to work on the makeup counter.
Yeah, it's 2025. I mean, people will make Bowie wore makeup. Come on. Get with the times.
Things like that, or like, you wear that better than I ever could. Or I used to wear heels. People would be like, you can walk better in those than I can. I'm like, yeah, I know. You're 80. Do you know what I mean? And they'll be like, yeah.
You've got scoliosis.
Yeah, hello. Look at my limbs. They're
sprightly.
Yeah. So things like that, like comparing me to like the traditional archetype of what like should and shouldn't be doing. People are like, wow, you shouldn't be doing that, but you're doing it great. That's
interesting. That's a good thing to know.
So if you want to give a compliment, just be like, I love your insert. Don't say anything weird though.
No. Yeah, we don't like that. So you say they give the 3 options on dating apps of the female, male, non-binary. What would your preferable option or scenario for the algorithm be?
This is why I think AI will kill us all. Algorithmically, big word. It's tough to leave an open box. For example, on lots of forms and things, like doctor's forms or like digital forms, leaving an open box for me to just write however I identify is often really great, because it's not necessarily being like catalogued into a way for me to be then shown to other people. Whereas on an app, like with a dating app, it can be difficult, because if you release an app to 7 billion people in the world, obviously not all of them are dating, because there might be children, like babies.
Yes.
But do you know what I mean? Like, if you release an app to the general public, and if you gave them a box to describe themselves, that could be quite hard for the app to then show you to the right people. Matchmake, Scylla, thank you. There are lots of options you can have. Male, female, non-binary is limited. But I think what's better, and what dating apps do a lot better, is before you even say this is who I'm attracted to, when it comes to the self-identification, there's loads of ways you can identify, and some do offer that space to say this is what I want. You know, the smaller apps, the boutique apps.
Yes, boutique. That's a good way to describe it.
Thank you. But yeah, for example, if I'm saying I'm non-binary, and then I'm matching with straight men who are also saying they're interested in non-binary people, sometimes it's interesting. I'm trying to think about what to say without being judgmental. And again, this is my personal experience.
Sure.
I can end up dating, incorrect, just my experience, but I can end up matching with people, let's say straight men who say that they're interested in non-binary people, who are perhaps exploring their identity, their sexuality, and are curious, perhaps slightly fetishizing of androgyny or transness. And so they may, rather than me looking for love in this crazy world, they're looking
for an experience.
They're looking for some afternoon delight.
Right.
Very different to angel delight.
Yeah. And is it a way of exploring, or is it, like you say, like a fetish thing? Like,
don't get me wrong. Afternoon delight, let's just say sometimes the clock strikes the afternoon.
Exactly. It's an opportunity to kind of maybe...
Hello.
Yeah.
A broken clock is right twice a day. But sometimes I'm like, if I'm earnestly looking for love, I'm like, oh, this person just wants to have, just wants his pornographic fantasy fulfilled. Yes. What a compliment.
Yeah.
That he's come to me. But do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's a bit like, oh, right. And I can't judge people for exploring their sexuality. We all do it. We all have to find out who we are. But sometimes that's a barrier.
And just being caught in that can be quite psychologically
Yeah.
difficult.
Because then I end up not really getting any further than
Yeah.
you up.
Oh,
Hey, you up?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fucking up.
Yeah, I'm up.
Got IBS.
Thank
Or
you.
what?
Yeah, I'm up. I'm watching reruns of Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
I'm up.
Jokes. Okay. The next one is using gendered terms like girl, queen, king offensive?
No.
No.
I call my brother girl.
Girl.
I'm like, girl, you're doing too much.
I like a girl.
I say it all the time.
Is that for everyone? Not everyone though. I guess it's.
I don't actually tend to say it in like real life. I tend to say it either to myself or in my head.
Yeah.
If someone said that to me, no. I personally wouldn't find it offensive.
Yeah.
If someone called me... The only thing I can think of when people say king is like short king.
Yeah, you don't want to be a king.
And I'm 5'10", so make up your mind.
Yeah.
Am I tall king?
Talking. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we are. We're on a podcast.
Exactly. Talking. No, this is not the same thing, but I love to call people pearls. I went from girl and now I call people pearl.
Why? Do I look like I live in a clam?
Yeah, you do.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I went from girl to pearl.
Okay.
It's quite sweet and endearing.
Yeah, I like it.
Isn't a pearl quite sweet?
What, you'd be like, hey, Pearl?
Hey, pearl.
But no, not offensive. Come
Okay,
on.
good. Amazing.
That's a classic like thing that like older generations would think
Is an issue.
is an issue, whereas don't care.
Yeah. What would you call a non-binary partner?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh, no, sorry.
A dream, a goal, an aspiration.
A pearl and a clam at the bottom of the sea.
And what would I call a non-binary partner? My partner.
Yeah.
And straight people love it when you say that because then they're instantly like, partner. Are you in business or are you gay?
Right.
You know, like if you go and watch someone, or if you like see someone and they're like, oh, my partner, and you don't know who you are, instantly like,
Yeah.
nails, ring, dangly earring, eyebrows,
Yeah.
gay. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Context clues, just.
yeah, context clues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing people seem to be obsessed with when they're talking about non-binary people. Is like, what are they going to call their mummy and daddy?
Oh yeah. For example, I made an Instagram, I believe you call it an Instagram reel,
Yeah.
with my niece saying, I love being Uncle JJ.
Right.
Because, you know why I like being uncle?
Why?
Is because sometimes non-binary people get things wrong. Because the neutral word for an uncle or an auntie is a nibbling. We're not doing that.
It's giving guinea pig. It's
Don't know who I
giving
need
kind
to
of
speak
gerbil.
to. The head of LGBT, you know, HR, LGBT. We're not doing nibbling.
It's criminal.
Yeah, it's criminal. That sounds a little bit suspect.
What are you nibbling at?
All
Who started that?
All jokes aside, you could like call yourself
Yeah.
whatever you desire. But for me, I was like, Uncle JJ works great. What I love is that I love being an uncle. Best part of my world is because I'm very interested. I see it as like a slight experiment because they've only ever heard me be spoken about with they pronouns.
Okay.
Or like as they actually don't know I'm called Jamie. They think I'm called JJ.
Oh.
So it's fun to see them just like adapt and pick up on what my family are all doing. And so when people are like, young children shouldn't be around this, it's like, well, they're actually just
Indifferent.
yeah, and they don't know anything other than what they're being told, which
Yeah.
is nothing inappropriate. That's just that I'm Uncle JJ and I live in London with Paddington.
I love that. And the last one of the searches is non-binary legally recognised in the UK?
No, and you know, you might know me from other things such as campaigning the government. That was something I did.
Okay.
Funnily enough, I was on a train back from Leeds. It was 2019. It was Valentine's Day. And do you know what I did? I said, I'm going to petition the government. So on that train home, I started a petition to say, hello, please can we have X markers on official documentation to have this legal validation? Because we didn't have it, and that was 2019. It still hasn't happened. I've actually learned since then that there are pros and cons to not having legal verification, let's say. For example, some people, let's say some non-binary people who are black or some non-binary people who are like immigrants or asylum seekers, they would rather not be like tracked, let's say. I put that in inverted commas, but like have all of their business known to the government, especially that sensitive type of material, because as we're seeing now, as governments become increasingly more right wing, actually in Germany as well, like that data, the government know that data, and there are some kind of difficult things going on in Germany in response to when anti-trans laws come in, because the government then knows who is essentially identifying outside of the binary. So my views on that have changed. And there are actually really amazing ways that people can have their identity affirmed officially in ways that aren't necessarily legal documentation. So like people changing their name by deed poll, people having like renaming ceremonies.
That's cool.
So people like, hello, Jamie is now JJ.
Yeah.
Ta-da, here's some cake. And things like that, where you can kind of have things that are more socially, kind of like social moments where you can celebrate and say, I've got a new name, whilst also having a little bit of an official change that's not, you know, we can't necessarily have the legal, like my passport, for example. Some countries you can.
Yeah.
But then again, like we're seeing now with trans people, for example, I know a trans woman who went to perform in the US and to get her visa because of Trump's new kind of executive order, her visa came back with a male marker. And people in the US are having their passports renewed. Their passports are coming back, even if they've lived as a trans woman for like 30 years, coming back with an M. So legal, official certification is not always the silver bullet that I think sometimes people think it is.
Bit of a protectant then, I guess.
Yeah, it protects you in some ways, correct. But for example, yesterday I went to give blood.
Well done, you.
We should all be giving blood.
Yes.
They just had a drop-down box and I could choose. So, for example, my title is MX. On the form, that's what it said. And I was like, brilliant. I can't officially change my gender identity in the law, but the giving blood people said, go for it.
I know you're saying 100% about like wanting to normalise that, like, it's not even something you think about now, the fact that you identify as non-binary. In the list of things that are important to you, how much is having that official X gender to be able to use that on your passport? How important is that to you?
I think there is a level to it where it would be lovely and it is important to me, but I think about it in the context of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And I think in the priority list of like what's going on globally, it's not a priority, and you could say this is quite pessimistic, but it's not a priority because I don't think it will happen.
Yeah.
And it's not looking like that will happen. So for me, I'm like, okay, we'll put that down. You know, it would be nice. However, it's not necessarily going to change my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
It might make certain things like the NHS or travel or, you know, visas and that type of thing more affirming. But I've had to reprioritize and say there are actually other ways that I can have a sense of affirmation, social affirmation, like things like I say with my niece and nephew, like things like that, and having just a family unit and friends that support me. Yeah, I'd rather that than you know, I can go to Honolulu with an X on my passport.
I love that answer. Thank you.
It's okay.
For this next part, we would love to quiz you. It's not a quiz. Just questions. Ask you about some slang or terms associated with being a non-binary individual.
Sure. Slang. Love Cockney rhyming slang.
Yeah, it's absolutely not
like
Cockney rhyming slang.
Oh, okay.
No,
cool.
It's not that.
Right.
Sorry.
No apples and pears.
So the first one is presenting. What does presenting mean?
Presenting. Okay, so like femme presenting.
I have no idea. Just like if I heard that associated.
Presenting is like sometimes you would hold a mic and sometimes it would be like in the studio and Matt Baker. No, femme presenting, Claire Balding. Femme presenting, mass presenting is like the way that you present to the world. So it's often it's like, so I used to say that I was more femme presenting, which would be like I present femininity to the world. But as I say it now, it sounds like a word that it sounds funny. Present, as if it's like
an act,
like a debutante ball, like presenting lady
or the manner.
But yeah, it's essentially just how you show up in the world.
Okay.
So again, it's something that I think a lot of trans and non-binary people are familiar with. But I mean, I guess maybe a question for you: is it something that It sounds like something you might think about, but you probably wouldn't use the word presenting. For example, earlier when you said you think about the way that you show up in the female and male gaze, it sounds like we all have that, but we just have a funny word for it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as well, and I don't know if microaggression is not the word, but if hearing someone say presenting puts a lot of pressure on the individual to be one or the other.
Yes.
Do you feel like it's a bit of an outdated term now then? Or it still could be used to be associated with non-binary?
I think there are ways that it is good to be used. For example, like going back to dating, you could say that you're more attracted to femme-presenting non-binary people.
Okay.
So it's a good, like, perhaps indicator of a group of people. But I do know what you mean. Sometimes it can feel a little bit pressurizing, or that you have to present in a certain way. But yeah, that's that one. That's a good question. Good slang.
Cool. What is gender dysphoria?
It's essentially a term where you feel it's like in TV and film. It's kind of often, and this is quite clunky, but it's kind of the moment where people would be like, they'd like put on if a person put on like a suit, and then but they were like a trans woman, or they're exploring their identity, and they'd be like, oh, I feel uncomfortable in this. Yeah. It's kind of that feeling of unease and dysphoria. So like a feeling that there's not a match between the way that you see yourself and, for example, like as a trans person, and the way that your body may look, or the way that you may present.
Yeah.
So like, for example, some trans women would have gender dysphoria about the more masculine traits that they may have. So like broad shoulders, or their voice, or their hands, or things that perhaps they may feel dysphoric about. But it's essentially something that is quite medicalized. For example, in the UK, you need to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria to be able to have a gender recognition certificate.
Oh, really?
So there's a part of it that's very medical. So you have to go to the doctors, and they say, yes, you have gender dysphoria. But equally, it's also something that people just live with. For me, I have not experienced that too much, because I feel quite comfortable exploring lots of physical presentations of gender. Perhaps I might experience gender dysphoria if somebody was calling me the wrong pronouns consistently. I might feel a bit like dysphoric.
Yeah.
But for me personally, not something I have hugely, but it differs between each person.
Yeah. Well, my second one here is gender euphoria.
Gender euphoria. It's like, so Zendaya, it's Jacob Elordi.
Labyrinth, kind of doing the soundtrack.
Yeah, they took ages to do the new season. Gender euphoria is just a fancy and it's quite an Instagram way to say that you feel good about yourself.
Yeah. Do people say that? It's not a feeling?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's just quite dramatic. Like, I'm euphoric. I've got a tie on and I feel great.
Oh my God. I don't think I've ever felt euphoria.
Yeah, like, this is what I mean.
One Direction, I guess.
think Thank You, it's the last concert I went to.
You're joking?
No, I don't like live music.
Oh.
Yeah, no, gender euphoria, it's a lovely feeling. It's often something that people describe in the like first moments where they feel content in their identity. So like the first time you might, for example, like a trans man, the first time they might have their hair cut in an affirming way, or that they grow facial hair, or if they start hormones, or if they have an affirming experience with a friend, like socially. There's lots of ways that you could say, oh, this is gender euphoria. It's basically just a way where you feel great because you've either self-affirmed or you've had someone else affirm your identity.
Okay.
It's a good nugget.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And the next one is envy.
Yeah, again, this is up there with nibbling.
It's not a vibe. It's spelled ENBY.
It's very Twitter.
So it's like
it's very Reddit.
Right.
Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Love to you all. It's basically just a shorthand way of saying non-binary.
Yeah.
And when I hear people say it, I think they're saying envy. It's essentially again, often used in like dating apps or social media profiles to say that you're non-binary, but in like a cool and hip kind of way.
Abbreviated.
Yeah, even though it's arguably longer and more annoying.
Yeah. Okay. And the last one is genderqueer.
What'd you call me?
Sorry.
Genderqueer. Okay. Great question. Again, this is something that is an identity that I feel like I'm playing that game where you can't say the word, but you have to describe it.
You can say it. There's no rules here.
Even though I can. Genderqueer, for some people, they would say that instead of non-binary, they identify as genderqueer.
Okay.
So for some people, it would be their identity. I'm not 100% sure, actually. I'll be fully truthful.
Okay.
I think, it sits in that middle ground of non-binary, transness, gender exploratory space. But as someone who doesn't identify as genderqueer, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
And I think it's good to say that.
Yeah. You don't have to know everything. We're all learning. You're speaking from your personal experience, though. You're not saying you've got the authority to be the knowledge of everything.
Yes.
All things non-binary.
Which was a hiccup I fell into at the beginning of my career, where I thought I had to do that. So now it's very freeing to say, do you know what? Don't know.
100%.
And something that I would encourage people to do if they're with non-binary people, if you're not the non-binary person, you don't know something, you can also just Google it.
Yeah, that not everything has to be asked face to face. That's with a lot of things at the moment, I feel
Exactly.
like.
Yeah. It's very similar to non-binary. It says here, genderqueer is an identity term and an umbrella term for people whose gender identity falls outside of the traditional gender binary, man and woman. So I guess they're kind of interchangeable. It's just another way of phrasing non-binary, I think.
Love it.
Love it.
The more you know.
Okay, well, we wanted to round off by asking our audience if they had any questions for you. Hi, Jamie. Any tips for dressing in a way that feels gender affirming without overthinking it?
Without overthinking it, great question. Do you know where is a great place that often, if you're shopping for clothes and isn't too gendered, because high street can be very gendered, go to the charity shops. Go vintage.
Good shout.
Less gendered, more to choose from.
Yeah.
Cool bits, trendy girl, or man or non-binary. I think the one thing that I always try and do is I know it's easier said than done, but people are thinking about themselves, not you. And I think that is true. For people who may look different or may pose that question of like, I've not seen someone like you before. Sometimes people are genuinely just like, what's going on? But I always say, look in the mirror, dress for yourself before you leave the house. I always feel great before I leave the house. Sometimes I'll leave the house, I get home and I feel a bit rubbish because people have been rude.
Right.
But as long as you feel content in yourself, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like I say, you don't have to present in a certain way if you don't want to. There's one clip that my parents still mock me for when I went on ITV News in a headscarf wrapped around like dot cotton.
It's chic.
It's chic. I looked great. And this was the time when I was wearing the foundation was called Clown White. So I looked like if you wrapped an Easter egg in a bow.
We listen and we don't judge.
I remember leaving the house and being like, I look amazing. Did the internet think I looked amazing?
Oh, yeah.
No, but I did.
Good.
So I took that photo, framed it, it's on my wall at home.
Love that.
Yeah. Wake up to it every morning. Hi.
Morning star sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good answer. Nice. And I love that about charity shops as well. I think they're good at kind of bridging the gap.
Not sponsored
By
Vinted and or eBay.
Yeah.
Also good for that.
I love Vinted.
Vinted.
Yeah, great shout. The next one is, my parents keep misgendering me and telling me not to correct other adults in our family or circle because they've lived longer and they will also not understand it.
Oh.
So just to keep the peace. I hate upsetting my family and being the problem, but I also can't sit there just being misgendered constantly. What would you do in this scenario?
A difficult one because it especially with age, like if you're young and you don't necessarily have the financial autonomy or just like literal legal autonomy to leave, you kind of, that's really difficult. First of all, I'd say is like, it's not your fault. And I think when you're young and you feel like you're bringing something into the family unit that is different and they've not seen before, it can feel like you're the problem because like this person has said that they're reacting negatively. Secondly, I'd say find community outside of that space, whether it be digitally or physically. Yeah, things like that can be difficult. However, I would say depended on the family unit. I remember one Christmas, I bought my dad a book that was like kind of like a children's book, but it was for adults, about how to
Navigate.
Like pronouns.
Okay.
My mum actually also set up a swear jar, but instead of swearing, it was misgendering. And I got to keep the money.
Fuck, that's fucking fair.
which is great.
Yeah.
You know, those funny videos of people online where they'll have like a megaphone if you get it wrong, and they'll be like, no. So there are lots of silly ways, but realistically, I think for me, what helped was finding community digitally that affirmed me, or physically, however you find it, to remind you that you aren't the problem.
Okay.
Like I say, if you're young, it can be difficult, but as you get older, you can kind of, I know it's a bit cringe, but like choose your family, and you can decide whether or not you want people to stay in your orbit.
100%.
That's difficult and obviously context dependent,
Yeah.
but you are not the problem,
Yeah. That's beautiful.
as Taylor once said.
Yeah. And she is the...
Problem.
I've noticed a lot of non-binary people also talk about being neurodivergent. Is there a link?
Yeah, interesting one. In my work as a writer, you know, I'm often looking at news. I get a lot of news and research coming in. So I have heard of that link, and I know that there is it's a space that is being studied, and I know that there is, especially within like community spaces, I know that a lot of queer spaces also happen to be very accessible to neurodivergent people. As someone who is not, let's say, officially neurodiagnosed with any neurodivergence, I would be, I wouldn't want to speak on that too broadly, but it seems like there is a lot, from my observations, there is a lot of community spaces for people with who are queer or non-binary and trans in that space, and who are also neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And it's a growing conversation.
Okay, for this part of the podcast, we play a game called Facts, Stats and Fiction, in which we kind of debunk or we demystify some kind of facts and stats around being non-binary in this case.
Sure.
So would you like to go first?
What was the first country to offer X gender identity on passports?
Ooh. I feel like Spain is quite progressive.
Sure.
From what I know in terms of like IVF and things like...
It's hot. You know.
It's hot.
They're probably quite good about that.
Absolutely.
You know. I know Germany have it, but I don't know if that's new.
Right.
The Scandinavians are quite chic, aren't they?
They are chic.
They'll probably get on board.
With their 4-day work weeks. They've got time to make decisions like this.
They've got time. Yeah, IKEA.
Exactly.
You know. I'm going to go Germany.
Okay.
Rogue.
I'm going to go with Spain.
So it was actually Australia in 2011, but you were both right, because as well as many European countries, including Germany and Spain, and Canada is another country as well, those countries allow an X gender marker on IDs, but many others don't. And in most of the world, unfortunately, there are no legal protections for non-binary individuals for healthcare, documentation and anti-discrimination still.
True or false? There are other gender-neutral pronouns other than they, them.
Oh, true.
True.
There's loads of funky ones.
Loads.
Z.
Z.
Zir. Zer.
Is that right? Or is that German?
Yeah. Ja and you. Yeah, there's loads of funky ones. I love it. I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's right?
Not in a bad way.
No.
It's just,
amazing. Who knew?
Zia.
Zia.
Yeah, you're right. The ones I've got down here are Z, Zem and Zer, but with an X, not a Z.
Amazing.
Do you know what? I'm learning all the time. I think that's something that people think when they speak to me. I'm not like
a beacon of knowledge.
Yeah, but I'm also not like subtweeting you in real life. I'm not like talking about you.
Right.
But when people are like, hey, do you want to talk about being non-binary? I'm like, yeah, I love it. But there's also
more to the
loads back here that
100%.
Needs to be filled up with knowledge. Like Zizir. Love that.
Zizir.
Who knew?
Hey.
I'm learning.
Amazing.
What percentage of non-binary people have avoided medical care due to fear of discrimination?
I mean, I hope it's a small amount, but unfortunately I think it's higher than I think. Maybe like 50% or maybe just over.
Quite chunky, isn't it?
It's quite chunky.
I'm gonna say 40.
40. Nice.
Very close, Jamie. It's 33.
Wow.
So 1/3 of non-binary people have avoided medical care due to fear of discrimination, and that's according to the National Centre for Transgender Equality.
That's loads.
Oh, wow.
1 in 3. Come on, guys.
Come on. Yeah. What does that look like? What does a more open and more inviting situation in terms of the healthcare system look like?
I think the one thing that I hear a lot about is specifically when it comes to like breast cancer screenings, cervical smears, that type of thing. There can be a lot of difficulty there when it comes to having accessible practices, for example, like neutral language, or people going and feeling like they can have an experience that's not gendered, because things like that can be quite gendered, you know, like when with the language. So I think having that space, and I know there have been improvements in that, so I think it's great. A lot of people online that I know are kind of, you know, trans men, for example, saying, go and get your smear test if you need it. But also, I mean, it's a tough one. Do I trust Wes Streeting, the current health secretary at time of record, to put that in place? Probably not. So maybe we go private. Maybe I start because I'm a doctor. Do you want your tits done? I'll do it.
Thank you. Is that an offer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not yeah. No shade. No, I don't.
Oh, amazing.
But yeah, tough one.
Yeah.
Tough one. We've just got to plough through.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm having a heart attack, call me whatever you like.
Hopefully an ambulance.
Thank you.
Way. Hello?
Funny. That was good.
What percentage of non-binary people reported being misgendered at work?
Not me.
No.
Well, I actually work for myself, and I often do misgender
helps.
myself. I have to take myself to HR, which is me just in a wig. How many? Actually, very interestingly, I wrote about this recently about workplace discrimination, and I know that across LGBT plus people, en masse, 40% are fearful of coming out at work. So based on that stat, if we do some extrapolation, I'm going to say 70.
Yeah, I'd say like 60, maybe 60.
I'm quite high there.
Well, actually, the answer is 35%, but I think the key word here is reported. So that's how many people have reported being misgendered to HR.
Okay.
Whereas I'm sure it happens a lot more without being reported. Probably, you're probably closer to the stat, but I don't have that one written down.
Sure. Tough.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, because that means I'd have to tell on myself if I did it.
Yeah.
Self-employed.
Imagine.
Like, you know, if I wake up on Monday and I see Jamie's put me in for a 15-minute sit down, we've got to ask why. What have I done?
Is everything all right out there?
Okay.
Okay.
Final one on my card. Number 3, how long have non-binary people been around? I'm going to say it's 28 years because that's how old I am.
Okay. And nothing existed before that.
I invented it.
I think it's way earlier than we think. But am I thinking Victorians? Am I thinking Egyptians? Am I thinking BC?
You think the non-binary people were building the temples?
It's possible.
They were at work.
Am I wrong?
The pyramids. No,
so
I mean,
sorry.
they were doing eye makeup. Everyone had a bit of liner on.
See, there's a lot that we don't know about it, but I guess it
Cleopatra.
wasn't written on the walls.
Cleopatra was a ZM. No, don't know. This is a bold statement, and this could be a clip that you take to social media. But
Let's go.
Jesus was non-binary.
I'm so fucking gullible. It's jarring.
Yeah. Look at that hair.
Yeah, I know.
Hello. No, I'm going to say like the Romans, you know, the Greeks, they were a bit fruity. So I'm going to say whenever that was. I don't actually know when that was.
I don't know dates.
So you're both pretty much right, but even earlier. So thousands of years since ancient times and across loads of different cultures. So I'll give you some examples. From the Two-Spirit people in indigenous North America, then there's also the Hijras in South Asia. There's gender diverse priests in ancient Mesopotamia. I am not very...
Priests?
In ancient Mesopotamia. The term non-binary is obviously more modern, which gained popularity in the 1900s, 2000s, but the identity itself is ancient.
Wow.
Well, you know.
Is that a read? I'm ancient.
Yeah. Old as
Great.
fuck.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I thought it just started when 1997.
This is the thing, and I think that's a big argument with the boomers. It's like, this has just come around 5 minutes ago. Why is everyone claiming this and that? Actually, no.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cleopatra.
Nice.
I'm done on my card.
Okay. So what ratio of young people in the UK identify as non-binary or gender fluid?
Interesting. What would you identify as young?
It says ages 13 to 25.
Right, so I'm old.
No.
I would be in the overs. I would be with Wagner and Rylan. So
That's a good place to be.
okay, I think a lot. I know that young people tends to be a bit more exploratory. I'm going to say a solid 6 out of 10. Oh, that's quite a lot, actually. Rewind. If there are 10 people in a room and they've all got blue hair, how many of them are non-binary? 10. I'm going to say 4 out of 10
Okay.
youths.
I'm going to go with 3. 3 out of 10.
So the answer is 1 in 20. The source was Just Like Us, a UK LGBTQ plus charity. But actually, 42% of people in Gen Z, 13 to 25-year-olds, know someone who uses gender-neutral pronouns like they, them.
That's a lot, actually.
That's a lot.
Think about when I was at school. I don't think the word was even really being used.
No. Only as I've come into a workplace have I understood, like, yeah, non-binary is a term.
I mean, lots of words were being used, but they weren't non-binary. Love that. 42%. The youth's really doing something.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Like, it's pretty
Who knows
cool.
what the future will look like? Thank you so much for coming on, Jamie.
I've had a lovely time.
I know you've come into this with a kind of maybe a grown point of view that you don't want your whole identity to be ironically talking about being non-binary, but I think it's conversations like these that will make it more the norm.
Yeah, exactly. And I think hearing people say, you know, like being able to be confident enough now in my old age to say things.
You're not old.
No, but like in my career, you know,
Yes.
like to know that there are lots of different things that I can do and that the non-binary community can do, as well as talk about it and educate in their own way. It's like I said to you off air, which will now be brought on air.
Thank you.
That I like to think of educating people as like when you hide medicine in your dog's food.
Not
You
calling me a dog.
No, I'm not calling me medicine. But, you know, like having conversations, but also being a bit silly, being a bit funny,
Yeah,
being, you know, beautiful,
absolutely.
being stunning, being intelligent.
Yeah.
Like people, my one piece of advice I always say, take what you like, leave the rest. It's applicable to this conversation. It's applicable to a buffet.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. Can we have a little cheer, please?
Yay!
And where can everyone find you on your socials?
At Jamie_Windust on Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd,
Sure.
wherever you would like.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye.